So, after a wonderful start to pre-season, we have seen that Chelsea have got a very, very deep squad full of immense players. And what Joey and I have been talking about, Joey's back on the channel. Welcome back.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me.
What I thought we'd discuss today is the lineup that we could see, our best lineup of Chelsea right now, based on the players that we have available to us. And we try and build a starting 11 that we think. I think this is going to be a little bit more difficult than you'd expect.
Well, do you know what I've tried to do here, right? I've tried to build this lineup without being a cop-out, because there is a very England golden generation style that I could go with this lineup, and I could do that with the emphasis on fitting all the boys in, all the star names, all the men that we spent big price tags on and we really pinned our hopes up. But I think that for the sake of yourself, for the sake of your lovely subscribers, we need to be a little bit more cutthroat with it. And we need to put aside the fact that, yes, we want to work away to have our new signings in the team and players that have done well for us in the past in the team and players that we have high hopes for. And I actually need to build myself a lineup that I think on a pitch is the most realistic one that we could see. And therefore, there will be big name exclusions from my lineup, as I'm guessing there will be yours.
Absolutely, yeah. And before we get into the team, I'm glad you mentioned the subscribers, because we've had a load of new subscribers on my channel. So thank you to every single one of you that have subscribed. If you aren't already, what are you doing? Join the channel right now. And while you're there, click on the link that is in the description of this video and also the title of this video, because Joey's always in there. Subscribe to Joey Knight's channel, please.
Thank you very much.
What
mate.
a channel he has.
I'll tell you what, the top liked comment the last time I was on the channel, really, that tickled
Say
me.
it.
I like that.
What was it?
Off memory, it was something along the lines of really respect Josh.aveste for giving this Joey guy a platform. Good to see him helping the smaller creators. And listen, much as we need to congratulate me and get him to the 100k mark, I need to thank you, mate, because I don't think I'd be on 60k if it hadn't have been for your contribution towards the channel. The people love us as a duo, I've got to admit. And it's going to be good news for them, because we are going to be launching our own channel
Here
together.
we go.
Can I announce it? Can I just announce it?
I love how many times you've teased this.
Yeah.
We need to just get it done now, don't we?
Oh, we get it done. we get it done.
I have to say, mate, as much as you've just sort of said there, you gave me too much credit because you've been an absolute legend. But I have to say, I just enjoy doing these videos more than anything. I just enjoy being in this studio, chatting Chelsea. Do you know what? It was always a dream of mine just to talk about Chelsea, and we've made it happen. So it's a bit mad, isn't it, that we
surreal,
just talk now about Chelsea, have a laugh, get amazing people watching us.
I feel like life has got
fun.
so surreal. For me, that nothing actually does feel surreal now. I tell you, one of the best. Do you know what? We get so much love. Yeah, we get so many nice compliments, and obviously, I love them all. Like when people say, and I've had some really. I'm going a little bit deep here, but I've had some messages of people saying stuff about us helping them get through hard times and stuff like that, and that's obviously touching. So for me to then say this, but do you know what thing actually meant the most to me when I saw it? It came up in a video when I was talking, and I went, when we first met each other, obviously it was over a year now, but I said, when we first met each other about a year ago or whatever, do you know how many people were shocked that we'd only known each other at that point, like a year or something? And they were saying, mate, your chemistry between the two of you and the banter you have and whatever feels like it's people that have grown up together and whatever. So that does go to show, how much we've smashed it.
It's mad, isn't it? Yeah. I remember coming into the studio, and obviously you've been doing this more than I had at the time. Like you'd been doing it for 6 months or 8 months, actually, probably by the time I came in here. I was shitting myself coming into the studio to record. Yeah, because I'd never been in front of camera properly before at that point. And so I was more nervous because I just thought I really don't want Joey's video to be shit. That was what the most thing was. So yeah, coming in here and getting the amazing feedback we got even on that first video. It was this time last year, wasn't it?
Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to watch one of them back, because I've never watched them back.
Have you not? I have. No. I watched one back, but our first one I watched back recently just because I thought, fucking hell, I must have been really shit on that first video. And I tell you what, we both goed it very differently than we did even then. It's very funny.
Mate, we've been on a journey, haven't we? We've been all over the world, different places. We're going to America next week. It's all Good.
It's all very exciting. Should we talk about the Chelsea team?
Let's talk about Chelsea.
Because what I want to do in this video is I want to go through and actually try and determine our sort of ideal 11 based on the players that we have, right? This isn't like a dream 11. This isn't building with players that we could sign. What I want to do is actually go in and go realistically, maybe for the Man City game, who do we realistically expect to start and who would be in our best 11? Because I think this is actually more difficult than you expect. Because I was looking at this and prepping for this video, I was thinking, oh yeah, there must be like an obvious starting 11. I have to say, I think we've got a very good squad at the moment, and I think this season is going to be more competitive than ever. There's obviously, we've got a young squad. We haven't got those elite like Galacticos that we used to have, and so I think it's going to be more even. So more than anything, I really just wanted to understand your squad. We'll go into your one first, and then I'll give my team. We'll sort of go through some players that have maybe missed out and sort of discuss who we think are harshly done by. So why don't you kick off with your team first?
Well, I want to quickly prerequisite this by saying that I don't believe, as much as I, am very much against this, I don't believe that the likes of Conor Gallagher, Trevor Chalobah, and even Georgi Petrovic will probably be included in my squad, because I don't believe that the club are going to allow them in any form to be here at the end of this transfer window. I think all of them will have moved on, one way or another, unfortunately, as much as I, wouldn't want that to happen. So I'm building this squad without them. And what I'm also doing is with this starting 11, I'm not going to go England golden generation style and just because they're a big name player or a big money signing or someone that's performed well for us, just naturally include them just because I've got to get them in the team. I am looking at this and I'm looking at it in terms of a team that actually works, a cohesive unit that is going to get the best out of each other. And ultimately, sometimes to get the best out of a team, some players might have to be sacrificed here and there. So with that being said, Robert Sanchez, I thought that he would be the player that was most likely to have a redemption arc maybe this season, because as much as I didn't like the idea of him replacing Petrovic, I still don't like the idea of it. I still think that if we can change our minds, we should be doing that. But I think the writing's on the wall, and I think that Robert Sanchez will be ahead of Petrovic. However, as much as I thought, okay, maybe he'll come in there and maybe he will, like his former Brighton teammate, Cucurella, have that bit of a stinker of a first season, but then come good in his second season and prove us all wrong. And listen, hopefully it still happens. I'm hopeful it can happen. But I'm going to put Jorgensen in there. Because the problem with this Robert Sanchez one is I watched one game of him against Wrexham and against Celtic, and I realised, oh no, that's what Robert Sanchez does, isn't it? And I said this to you earlier. If an alien flew down from outer space and said to me, right, I've got a lot of plans, but the first thing on my list while on planet Earth is I want you to enlighten me. What sort of player is Robert Sanchez? I just showed him the Celtic match.
Yeah, wonder save in the first half.
Yeah.
Probably one of the best saves we've seen from Robert Sanchez.
Mate, I said to you already, I don't think Peter Cech makes that save.
Yeah, so true. So
and
true.
That's saying.
And then he had a few other really pretty decent saves in that first half.
He did.
And then he went in at half time, forgot how to be a goalkeeper, wanted to be a centre back, and basically just fucked it from there, didn't he?
Listen, to use a little boxing analogy, when you land a good shot, don't think you're the man. Still understand, okay, I can still be chinned here. Yeah. Let's not get too high on my success. It almost seemed like he had a little bit. He gave a few hospital passes here and there. And ultimately, I get, that some keepers have a howler in them every now and again. And it's an unfair comparison to a comparison I had seen, right? A few people were making comparisons to David De Gea. And you can kind of see where they're coming from.
Yeah,
you can kind of see where they're coming from.
Free agent still, by the way.
Yeah. But the problem with that is David De Gea I would say, if you had 5 matches out of him, I think you'd have 3 good performances, 1 sort of average one, you'd have a howler
really
in there.
Bad one, yeah.
And for a goalkeeper to drop a howler 1 in 5 matches, he's not good enough.
No, it's
that
not.
means he's dropping 4 or 5 of them a season.
Yeah.
More. maybe 8, 9 of them a season.
Yeah.
Tell maths ain't my strong point.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, every now and again, okay, I can give you a pass. Robert Sanchez makes some criminal mistakes, multiple criminal mistakes, for me, every 90 minutes. And therefore, I can't trust him in between the sticks. And I'm then going to pick a man who I haven't even seen that much of, just on the hope that he doesn't make those same sort of howlers.
Yeah, 22-year-old who, as you've said in the past, you know, the Villarreal fans are not massively sure on him whether he was going to be top draw. So this is the thing, like, this is a massive gamble. We're going into this clear league era now. We aren't buying established, ready players to go. We're buying potential. And you hope that his ability is good enough to get by right now in the cauldron that is the Premier League. But I think we have to twist now. I can't see a situation in which Sanchez does enough in pre-season unless he has, you know, 4 or 5 games where he does saves like he's just done and he fixes the stuff with his feet to get back into team. There are too many unknowns with Sanchez, and so that tells you everything you need to know. We're going for the complete unknown in Jorgensen over these random unknowns of Sanchez. So I don't think there are many Chelsea fans out there. I'd love to know in the comments what you guys think. I don't think there are many people out there now that are still backing Sanchez, and I think there are a lot of people that would do this ranking. They'd probably go Petrovic, Jorgensen, and then Sanchez. I think that's probably the order that most people would go into. But that's very interesting. Now let's go on to the defence, because I think what we're going to do is we'll predominantly set up with a 3 at the back, bearing in mind that's what Maresca is going to do. That's what I've gone with, yeah. So why don't you kick off with that? Who's at your right centre-back position?
So my right centre-back position, I am going to go with Reece James. And in a way it pains me, because I understand that if he's playing at right centre-back, maybe to an extent, not completely, but maybe gone are the days where we're going to see Reece James providing assists, scoring goals. I look back at the match against Brighton when he still had the long hair, when he was coming through. I think that was played behind closed doors, COVID sort of times that was. Scored a screamer from outside the box. Juventus 4-0. Who can forget when Cobham rocked up and beat Juventus 4-0? It wasn't Chelsea that day. It was Cobham 4, Juventus 0. Scored a good goal in that match. Took it down the chest. Half volleyed it in.
Would Cobham 11 beat Chelsea right now?
Yeah.
The first team?
Yeah.
Probably would.
Unfortunately, they would, yeah.
Maybe we need to start the Cobham team.
Yeah, that is a good debate. But yeah, the Cobham 11 would beat Chelsea. But I think they'd probably beat them quite handily, 5-1 or so, and the one Chelsea goal coming from Cole Palmer, maybe. Maybe I'm too harsh. But maybe if he's in a right-sided centre-back position, gone are the days that we're going to see that. So I do think that takes a lot away from his game. Yeah. However, when I get further into my lineup, you'll see why Reece is there. And that being said, Reece is still class. Reece is still class. He can play anywhere.
Do you think he's wasted in that centre-back position? Like, we've talked so much about the attacking prowess of Reece James. I really am worried that he will be playing a lot at right centre-back this season. And I do think that we're losing some of that attacking impetus that he has. The only caveat to that I'll give is that I do think the injury prevention will be far higher as a centre-back. Yeah. Maybe even more as a centre-back than a DM would even be, because the DM still has to get about the pitch, and also we found that DM has to make those recovery runs into the full-back position. So
yeah. I think you can be two things at once, right? I think you can be wasted in a position, but also be really good in that position. So I think that the quality of Reece James speaks for itself, and therefore he's still going to be a good option and the best option probably that we've got in that position. But yeah, his creativity will be wasted a little bit there. In fact, his creativity will be wasted massively there. But as I get through my team, you'll understand why I've got him there. And ultimately, in an ideal world, we play wing backs, Reece James stays fit, and Bob's your uncle. But we're being realistic with this lineup. We're not going ideal world. We're going realistic. And realistically, I don't see him then. I'm going to stick Fofana in the middle. Obviously, this not hangs in the balance, but a lot more is required of Fofana. Obviously, we need to make sure that he comes back from the injury. More importantly, we need to make sure that he stays injury-free. But I saw enough from him under Tuchel, little bits and pieces under Graham Potter, to believe that he can be a top centre-back. I think we believed that when we spent the money on him and bought him in. And I think that despite him maybe slipping from people's consciousness a little bit, I still do think he can be that. I really do rate him if he can get back to where he was. And let's be honest, even where he was, we still saw it as a potential player as well. So he'd need to elevate even that. But I think for us next season, if I look at the options there of maybe a Badiashille, maybe a Disasi, obviously, as we say, Trevor Chalobah's going out, I think Fofana's going to be our best option there. Yeah,
it's very interesting with that one. Right, so what about the left-hand side? Who are you going to put
The left-hand side, for me, can only really be one man, and that is Levi Colwill. Now, one of the things that I credited Benoit Badiashile with was his calmness on the ball, his passing range, the passing ability. I think Levi Colwill surpasses him in all those areas and is less prone to a howler. Now, people will get in the comments, like they have done before when I spoke about Colwill and said that I'm blindsided by him. I understand that there has been times when he's dropped the odd... I don't even want to say he's dropped the odd howler because I don't think he has.
He's ever dropped a clanger.
No, I don't think he has. Bad. But there's been times when he could be better. But my God, no one's going to be perfect in a team that, haven't even finished above Spurs last season, for example. Yeah. So I think that Levi Colwill is class. I think he's quality, and I think he is the future of England at centre-back. Yeah,
and I also just want to see him play more because I do think he's got potential to grow even better than he is right now. And I think he only gets that with playing time. Do you know what I mean? So I do see the left-hand side, and I'm glad you've done this, the left-hand side being the one that inverts. And so really, if you're looking at that back three, like Colwill is the better option for me. I get that a lot of people love Badiashile. I just think the performances have been too up and down with him. We can't really sort of pin our hat on him being the one to go with. So I think...
Well, do you know what it is with Badiashile for me?
Yeah.
Brilliant player if he's got his hand held.
Yeah.
And I don't feel...
He's not going to have his hand held this season.
He's not going to have his hand held.
In fact, he's probably got the least hand holding he's had since he's been at the club because he's going to have a very difficult position to play. He's not going to have any experience in and around him.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to adapt to it. These centre-back positions for me are the hardest positions in the pitch in Enzo
and that's why
system.
I think that Levi Colwill had a discredit done to him at some points because Levi Colwill was thrown in at the deep end.
Yeah.
When Benoit Badiashile first came into the club and looked very good, he wasn't thrown in at the deep end. Yeah, okay, it was a season where we finished 12th and we weren't good. But he had Thiago Silva there. And a lot of the time he had Ben Chilwell next to him, who was a more senior player.
Yeah.
And he had other guys in the defence, Trevor Chalobah in there at times. So I do think he had his hand held somewhat. And I think when you throw him in at the deep end, he doesn't fare as well. But maybe he'll prove me wrong. Hopefully they all prove me wrong, anyone that I've got doubts around.
Yeah. I think the only question that I've got around this is it slightly lightweight for what we need to do? And we'll, after you run through your team, we'll go through some other potential options of being very close to the team. But let's continue with the left-sided play here, the one that's in the pivot, but we know is actually a nominal left back. I think this is probably one of the first names on the team sheet now, is it not?
It is, yeah. It's Marc Cucurella. I mean, even watching pre-season so far, we're crying out for a Cucurella in there. I know we're trying Reece James in that role, and I'm not saying Reece James is doing a bad job of it. I don't think it comes that natural to him, and maybe it'll get better and better. Maybe one good match and I'll change my tune. But at the moment, I struggle to find many players in world football that are better at doing that role than Marc Cucurella. I'm not saying there aren't any, but I'm saying he's probably top 5 at doing that. And do you know what it is as well? And this sort of clears up why I'm having Reece James in the defence rather than having him there, right? We do need to think about the availability of Marc Cucurella in comparison to Reece James. I'm not saying Marc Cucurella hasn't had injuries. He has had injuries. He has had time on the sidelines, but not a fraction of what Reece James has had. Also, I think that Marc Cucurella is a better tackler of the ball than Reece James. And I think when you watch it on the eye test, sometimes people might not agree with that. People might push back against that and say, no, hold on. With Marc Cucurella, you've got to understand that it might not always look pretty, but look how often it works.
Yeah.
That's the main thing about it. Very aggressive, forces mistakes, and ultimately will regain possession a lot. And sometimes, and I've said this to you before, sometimes you need a bit of bastard in there, mate.
Yeah.
And that is what Cucurella is.
Yeah. And also, I do think, maybe this is being harsh to Reece a little bit, but I do think the passing and the ball retention that Cucurella does might be even better than Reece James in that pivot role. Just the way that he gets the ball in the half turn, recycles it, keeps the ball, does an easy pass. I do think that that Cucurella is there. So that's a good one. I think, to be honest with you, that's one of the easiest ones that we could possibly do. Alongside him, this is the other pivot.
Yeah, this is a really hard one for me. And again, I said the way I was going to pick this team was for what I think is strongest. And I'm not saying I don't think this is strongest, but what I'm saying is there's hot competition in this area for me. There really is. I'm going to pick Enzo Fernandez. And I'm going to have Enzo Fernandez there. I think that Enzo Fernandez is better when he's got more of the pitch in front of him in a deeper role where he can see more, where hopefully he can create more, and that's what I have him there for. But Romeo Lavia is going to be really, really hot on his heels in this position, and maybe it will be a case that if Enzo Fernandez doesn't get off to a flying start, maybe Romeo Lavia will be ready to take this role off of him. What I do think is that with the amount of games we're going to have this season, mate, I truly believe we're going to have an extra 15 games minimum on what we had last season, to be honest.
Especially with the Club World Cup, mate, straight after the season finishes.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, it could be 10 more games.
So I think both will be given their opportunity, and then maybe we'll take the sample size of what we've got when we've seen either Lavia or Enzo playing there. And have a look. But ultimately, I think that they're the two players you're picking from there. Ugachukwu, but I don't think he's close enough to be in with a shout there. So I'm going to put Enzo there. But a little spoiler for when we get onto the players that are just on the edges of this squad. It's not an easy decision for me to make out of him and Lavia, but I'm going to stick him there for the minute.
I think Lavia for me, and obviously we'll go into these guys in more detail. Lavia is the one that's probably the closest to the team out of those options. So I actually really like that, and I do think, as much as we've got some very negative stuff around Enzo at the moment, I do think there is a little bit of rewriting that people do about how good he actually is. Now, bear in mind, he played for an injury, significant injury last season. Even before that, when he first signed, he was mucking it in midfield that had, a Jorginho and a Kovacic and still playing so well. I do think this guy's obviously got immense quality. The fact that Real Madrid wanted him and that he was going for the amount of money that we did sign him for shows that there was an amazing amount of interest for him.
Do you know what my problem is, mate? And I'll be completely transparent with this. I will be influenced by the price tag. I will always be influenced by the price tag. And therefore, the same way we do it with Raheem Sterling sometimes, we say, okay, importance in comparison to what we're paying him wage-wise needs to be something we look at. And I am influenced by the price tag. And if you say to me, name your top 5 Chelsea players from last season, for me personally, I could be wrong, you could all disagree, and you could even disagree, mate. But for me personally, if he makes it in, he makes it in at 5th. And then when I look at the amount of money he was bought in for, that's my worry. But there's always underlying factors. He played for an injury, and ultimately it was a season of change for us. Yeah,
and I still think he's got enough time to come back, get rid of the injury that he needs to do, evolve himself really in the Enzo Maresca system. And I do think, because of his ball retention and because he can make the turn and make the passes that we need insightful passes from that area. I do think he's the most qualified person for that role. I'm sure that Lavia can do it. Lavia is actually known for doing pretty good forward passes as well.
Yep.
But you have to say Enzo's just that level, not level above in terms of quality, because I think both of them are pretty similar, but he's slightly older, and I do think he's got the leg up in terms of like international experience and that sort of thing. He's played more football. So I rate that. So in terms of the midfield too, I think this is one of the hardest areas in terms of the 3/8s like we're trying to pick here. So who have you gone for in this position?
Well, it is a really hard area, and ultimately, people have got to miss out. People have really got to miss out. I'm going to give you my 2, right? I believe and sort of agree with what you think in terms of one needs to be more attacking minded and have somewhat of a free role, might be giving it away a little bit there. And one needs to be more of an industrial player, more of a player that's going to get about, going to have the legs, can be a player that creates and puts some good balls through to those forward players, but also can be a player that gets stuck in and contributes towards a high press at the times and us winning the ball in the final third, which is going to be really, really important for us. So one of the men is going to be Caicedo in there, and the other is going to be Christopher Nkunku. Christopher Nkunku is going to be one of, and when I say one of, I'm not on about one of 5 or 6, I'm on about one or 2 most important players to Enzo Maresca this season. Yeah,
and you hope that he stays fit and he can actually contribute in that role.
He will stay fit. I've had a word with him.
He said he's going to be all right. I'm glad you've spoken to him, because I was worried about that actually. I'm glad you've rekindled that bond, because I knew you fell out recently with Christopher. And
I just gave him a text. Good GD. Yeah. So just abbreviate, because he ain't got time. You good for this season.
Yeah. Okay. You didn't say you up.
No.
That was after.
Good. Yeah, no, he's up for it. But you good for this season. Yeah. And he just texts back, YH.
Oh, and he didn't add a lol or anything like that?
He might have had M8. Yeah, mate.
Yeah, mate. Oh, yeah. Okay. On mate terms. That's lovely for you. It's interesting actually against Celtic, by the way. When he was pressing as a front 2 alongside Mark Guiu. So in a way, you want the best out of him from that, and he was a second striker in that pressing system. So, mate, the Enzo Maresca sort of formation is going to grow and develop over pre-season. if he does end up playing in that sort of second striker role, that is the perfect role for Christopher Nkunku. And thus far, we haven't seen him play in that system. So I hope that Christopher Nkunku does really surprise a lot of people, because I think a lot of people have forgotten how good he was. The stats speak for themselves in the Bundesliga. It was 1 in 2 goal contributions a game, really, in his career thus far, both in the Bundesliga and at PSG, mainly in the Bundesliga, let's be honest. So we're expecting a lot out of him, and we should do, because he's got that quality. So I agree. I think this season he could be talismanic. The key thing is that he stays fit, and you just hope he doesn't go down in pre-season, and you hope that he gets a bit of momentum. If he gets momentum, he's one of our best players, you have to say. So moving on from the 8s, and this is maybe perhaps where we did actually differ, and we'll get into that in a second in my team. Who have you got then for the front three?
So my front three is going to be Palmer, Jackson, and Sterling. Now, Cole Palmer and Christopher Nkunku could very easily switch positions, actually, right? Yeah. They very easily could. Jackson, I think, is our strongest option at number 9 at the minute. I think that he is going to be probably definitely hitting better numbers than he did last season. And to be honest, for a debut season for a 21-year-old, 22 tops, that was a really impressive debut season. I think he feels the love from the fan base now a lot more. I think he feels a little bit more settled now, a bit more confident, and I think that he missed 1 or 2 sitters here and there, but he'll also score 3, 4, 5, 6 goals that he wasn't ever supposed to score. Yeah. And that is the way it is with Nicholas Jackson. I've dubbed him the Enigma, and I still go by that. So I think he'll lead the line unless something crazy happens and we go out and sign an Osman, something like that. Cole Palmer is obviously going to be that right winger that gives us goals and assists, cutting in on his left foot. But as I say, very much so possible that him and Nkunku could change, and maybe even in games, maybe depending on how games are going, depending on how his individual duels of certain players are going, maybe they'll have a little bit of telepathy and switch over. However, I do actually see Caicedo as being closer to him in that sort of role where he is as the sort of 3-8. And then on the other side, Raheem Sterling, it's mad. It's like a penny drop moment where all of a sudden, I've seen him in pre-season, he looks bang up for it. Let's not jump the gun and say that means that that's definitely going to be what we get out of him in this season. But with way less reliance on our wingers tracking back and putting up a defensive shift because of the shape of the team now, I actually think that will suit Raheem Sterling very, very much. But the main thing here is that I want every single player in this team to be consistent. And consistent is not a word that I would label Raheem Sterling with. I very much think he's more patchy. So, again, we'll go into it in a second, the players that are just on the periphery of this squad. And then you might see a few players that I could see potentially playing ahead of Raheem Sterling. Yeah. But on the opening day, this is what I'd go with. Yeah.
Do you think that left-hand side is like our weakest area on the pitch right now?
It is, unless someone catches fire and has a really good season. And ultimately, you do see when a new manager comes in, all of a sudden, it can complement a player perfectly. We saw it last season with Conor Gallagher at times. We saw it with, obviously, Cucurella when he was inverted. Cole Palmer, I don't think it really matters who the manager was. I think you would have seen the best out of him. But we do see it. And when I'm looking at the sort of bite-sized samples we've got from pre-season so far, I'm looking at Raheem Sterling and I'm thinking, you could be the player that really flourishes in this new system. Yeah. And it's now or never for him, because ultimately, if it doesn't happen now for him, then he's looking at playing the rest of his sort of years at a lower level. So I think for the price tag he was brought in for Chelsea, we spent a fair bit of money on him. He's been all right, but he's just been way too patchy. If it's ever going to happen, it needs to be now. And I'm gonna put my faith behind him and back him. Yeah. With the high and wide winger, he's playing the most like a Man City side right now in terms of the way that he's doing it. And obviously Maresca, with the Man City connection, he would know Raheem Sterling very well. He would trust him. And I do think, as we've said in previous videos, it's going to get the best out of Raheem Sterling when he's high and wide, able to take players on that left-hand side, cut inside and get shots away. If he doesn't need to do defensive work, he can be fitter and able to make the shooting contributions that he needs to make. And then you hope that he has the sort of cold contributions that he needs to make to be able to make a difference for us. So I respect it. I think for me, there's too much water under the bridge with Raheem Sterling. So he doesn't make my team. But as you say, if he carries on playing in pre-season the way he's playing now,
and tears it up, then I can't see him missing out against Man City, to be fair. And I do think we need to really strongly consider this Maresca City connection. And actually the City connection goes throughout our entire team, doesn't it? We've got, the director of football, our boy that keeps watching our videos that we love.
Joe Shields.
We've got Maresca, who has this Man City connection. And then we've got all the City players that we have.
Yeah.
Sterling, Palmer, Lavia. Tosin, yep, still Man City connection. So there's that sort of like that connection with the entire, almost like a spine of the team that we can see. If they're going to play the Man City way, I think we could do a lot worse than that. But it is interesting that we've moved from being the thought leaders in terms of recruitment, player development, and now that's moved to a Man City, and we're currently the feeder team. It's a bit worrying when you think about that. Maybe that's harsh to say that we're the feeder team, but we're certainly taking quite a few influences from Manchester City. So, off that, why don't I give you my starting 11
to see how much it differs to mine.
What I love about this is that you and I, after all these years now, the year that we've been shooting these videos together, we're too similar. Together. Yeah, we're too similar. So I'm not massively different from you, but there are some key areas that we do change. So I've also gone for Jorgensen in goal. I've also gone for Reece James, but I do think Reece James's position in this team is massively up in the air. Not because of his quality. Obviously, he is our best player or one of our best players that you can see. I just am really worried about balls over the top and how he actually defends.
Do you know what's funny, mate? When Maresca was appointed.
Yeah.
Let's think of his name then for a second.
Yeah.
When Maresca was appointed, I sort of looked at it and I thought, right, that makes a lot of sense because stylistically it's very similar to us and there shouldn't be sort of wholesale changes going in there. Maybe it'll be less of a hard adaptation, for example, than a manager that plays a 4 at the back and counter-attacking football to someone who wants to play a high press and things like that and front foot. Actually, the adaptation's quite vast and it's a lot more different to what I was expecting.
Yeah. This pre-season is going to be the hardest that we've had to adapt to a system. I think it's even more difficult than the Sarri system. I think the Sarri system is actually quite interesting, easy to understand. Obviously, we didn't have the pre-season with Conte where he played the 5 at the back, which maybe makes it even more difficult that the players had to learn that. But again, the Conte system with 5 at the back enabled players to play in their best roles. We had wing backs playing in their best roles. He converted Victor Moses, but Victor Moses got in the team, took like a duck to water, didn't he? Do you know what I mean? He just came in and looked brilliant. Made our midfielders who were slightly slow and not as mobile look better. So this is definitely the biggest adaptation that we've got in terms of system, as you say, that we've had in a very, very long time. And I do think we're going to have teething problems even at the start of the season to adapt into this. I don't think the pre-season is going to be the be-all and end-all. I think we're still going to have to learn from it. It just takes movements that we're not used to doing. Like, Reece James having to sort of invert, but then also cover the right back when he needs to do. He's got to do runs that he's never done before. So just that, let alone the pressing structures, it's all very different. Speaking of, the centre-back for me, the central centre-back is going to be Wesley Fofana as well. Yep. I'm worried about this position because I don't think that Wesley is the best suited to this, but I think I'm just kind of getting him in the team. I think you have to have Wesley in the team. His quality, the amount of money that we spent on him, he was known as one of the best centre-backs, young centre-backs in the world when we signed him. And I think for good reason, he had that potential about him. And I think if he hadn't had the injury, he might have had a very different career trajectory even than he's going to now. He might have been a world-class level centre-back. So
there was a time when he was signed, you were looking at him with, I was about to say with the likes of like Saliba, but even Saliba hadn't really come to prominence as much back then. He was having a good loan spell, but he wasn't the level we know him at now. So I think if Wesley Fofana can get back there, it's a big if. But if he can, we could have a gem for the next 10 years in our hands. Yeah,
and that's the thing now. That's the question. How is he going to recover from that injury? We know how significant it was. He's been training on grass and running since February, I think it was. So it's taken him a long old road just to get back off that injury. You never know how these players are going to adapt to it. So I think it's still a massive if. And again, maybe even more than the physical side, he needs to be switched on mentally because there's something at the moment that positionally he just doesn't understand the system, and it worries me from that perspective. But I think
he's got the injury in his mind a little bit as well. I think he's got the injury in his mind a little bit as well. And listen, as much as you can, I'm not saying you are here, but as much as you can throw a little bit of shade at that about playing with the injury in his mind, look what happens with certain players. Reece,
Yeah.
when you don't play with the injury in your mind. Because no one's telling me that when Reece James comes back into the team, all these years where he's been coming in and out of injury, he comes back in, mate, and he plays like he's been playing for the last 6 months.
So true.
And although we love it, maybe when we step back and we look at the bigger picture when all's said and done, maybe we'll go, yeah, glad he sort of didn't bust the gut to make up ground in that pre-season sometimes. Glad he didn't stretch that extra little bit in pre-season sometimes when maybe he didn't need to. So, listen, I always say, time's the best storyteller. We're going to see. We're going to see with Fofana.
I do think as well, like the medical department being completely different and Maresca not running the players right next to games is going to make a difference this season. And I know this might be ultimate jinx, but I do see us having less injuries this year. I don't think we can have the same amount of injuries that we had previously. So then I'm stuck to you, same sort of back to beyond this, Colwill and Cucurella. I think basically Colwill has got enough ability and enough reputation within the game that he's going to be in the team. Even if Badiashille has a wonderful pre-season, which he hasn't thus far, I still think Colwill will be in that starting 11. I think he is the best sort of left-sided centre-back that we've got. I think you made that really clear in your explanation. I agree. Cucurella, again, like I say, one of the first names in the team sheet. Alongside him, I've also gone with Enzo. But like I said, I think for me, this is the closest one to call out of any of the positions.
Any position on the pitch, I think this is the one where you go... You almost feel a little bit guilty in putting him there because ultimately I don't think he's massively deserved over Romeo Lavia being there, but at the same time he is deserved. Yeah. I'm just saying he's not. It's not a like the expression we use. It's not a tap-in to put Enzo there.
No,
but I think he's done just about enough. Very much need to see more from him this season. Hopefully we do.
Yeah, and look, Lavia could. And this is maybe why Enzo is coming back as quickly as he is, because I don't think Enzo needed to come back when he did. I think he finished the Copa America, 2 weeks ago? The fact, by the way...
Sorry, is Enzo going to America? Or is
he's flying on the 29th.
To America?
Yes.
Fair play.
So he's going to be involved very quickly. And bear in mind, none of the Euros lads that got to the final are going to be there and flying out to America. It's very telling that Enzo is there. And perhaps it's a sort of a remedy to the situation that Enzo's put himself in that he wants to get back in the squad, make amends, and also prove to Maresca that he deserves to be starting after putting country above club when he decided to make the move to the surgery. He's going to have to perform, because if he doesn't, I do think Romeo Lavia is waiting in the wings ready to go. So I think for me, that's one that's up in the air, but I've gone for Enzo. Then I think you have to put Caicedo in there as well. I think, like you, I think there's a discussion to say that Caicedo may end up being the holding midfielder, but I think that Caicedo is basically the Kante in this team.
Yeah.
We always thought that Kante was going to be the deepest lying player, and actually we got the most out of him when he was bombing up and down. He scored the goals that he needed to, but more often than not, he was actually pressing and breaking up play higher up the pitch. And ultimately, in modern day football, you want your players getting the ball closer to their goal, so then you've got a better chance of scoring in it. You know,
to use a comparison though, right? And this really happened when Caicedo grew in confidence, and I think that's why it's such a good way to say he's more a player in the Kante mould. We're not saying he's as good as Kante, but Makelele would get that ball, he would win it, and the first thing that came into his head would just be to pass it straight away, and it was the right thing to do there. As Caicedo's confidence grew last season, so many times he'd get the ball and he'd start to drive it forward, and I'd be sat in the stands thinking, he's still on it. He's still on the ball here. God, I'm getting towards the edge. He should have a shot here or something. And then he'd thread a nice little ball through, stuff like that. Yeah. I think just the way that footballers are brought up now, you're going to have that creative side to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come through the sort of academy ranks and things like that. Not saying he came through ours, but, So I think he does have that level of creativity. I got really high hopes for him. When I'm looking at Ugachukwu in pre-season in that role, and I'm thinking, you're doing all right. Yeah. You're keeping that warm. Yeah. Just keeping that role warm, 100%. Because that's where Caicedo is going to be.
He can shoot though, by the way. Caicedo isn't just there to break up
goal
play.
Against Spurs.
Well, yeah, like he did that one, the amazing halfway line shot that he scored, unbelievable goal. He can strike a ball. Like we're just saying that he's like this destroyer, this player that breaks up play. He's got a lot more to his game than that. So we got to slap him in there. The one that you haven't mentioned, but I actually do think is going to be almost guaranteed to be starting is Dewsbury-Hall.
Well, this is the thing. I was going to speak about him when we come to the players that are on the periphery sort of thing, but I think that it's very, very likely that he will be starting in there.
Yeah.
Just for me, listen, I find myself fighting the corner of Dewsbury-Hall quite a lot because people are putting a bit of stigmatism towards the fact he was signed from the Championship and whatnot. But ultimately, no matter how much I fight his corner, Nkunku's a better player and Nkunku should be in there.
Yeah, and look, spoiler alert, I put Nkunku on the left-hand side. The reason why I put Dewsbury-Hall in there is because, like Caicedo, he's the box-to-box midfielder, and actually he's more creative than we think. Yep. Like, he does have a lot of assists, in the Championship. And also, I just feel that he'll be threading passes to an Nkunku, and I want Nkunku closer to goal. Now, the free eights do get very high up and closer to goal anyway, but I do want, our boys out there. And I do think Nkunku, I know I've said this before, but I think Nkunku can impact the game more from a wing position if he's cutting inside, shooting higher up, less defensive responsibility, because I want the free eights to be able to go up and down, up and back on the pitch. And so I want Nkunku to be very close to Jackson. I want him to be able to score goals. And I think he might score more goals from the wing position. That might be foolish, and we might be saying that the free eights crash the box more often and get more goals. But I do want more from that. So the other two players that we have to mention are the two players that you also called out. I think Jackson will be number 9. I think Palmer will be on the right-hand side. Now, the only worry that I've got about my team is that we don't have that explosive pace other than Christopher Nkunku on the wings. I do think that we'll see a lot of rotation in these front roles. In fact, I think we'll see a lot of rotation in the front 5 because I think, as you say, Cole Palmer will end up playing in the number 8 role quite often. Nkunku, as you say, will play in that as well. And then the wingers they're gonna rotate. I think what you saw with Maresca when he was at Leicester is he'd bring players in, he'd rest them, he'd bring those players out. And the wingers don't have to run as much, but they certainly have to contribute quite aggressively in the final third.
And listen, mate, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So just because one team, for example, don't rotate as much and they do well. Let's say, for example, an Arsenal, Trossard comes in there every now and again, but you can guarantee that Saka and Martinelli will probably be there a lot of the time. It doesn't mean that every team's going to be in that mould. And ultimately, we saw it last season, didn't we? That the minutes were shared out quite a lot along that front line. And towards the back end of the season, it came really good for us. So I think that when we speak about players that are sort of on the sidelines but very close to the team, you've got the likes of a Mudryk in there, You've got the likes of even...
Is he in your list?
He is in my list. Should I give you mine?
Yeah, go on. Let's go into the list.
So my list, Lavia, that's a no-brainer. Yeah. I'm literally thinking, okay, it's between him and Enzo, and it's a small amount of space between them, really. Malo Gusto. I systematically don't think that Malo Gusto fits the system all that well. But at the same time as saying that, I could find you certain football systems that maybe Roberto Carlos doesn't fit that well. So it's no plight on Malo Gusto. I think he's a brilliant player. I think he was in our top 2 players last season, top 3 definitely. But Malo Gusto would be sort of on the edges there, just sort of on the borderline. The interesting thing is, does he do as well in a back 3 sort of centre-back pairing that Reece James does? I'm not too sure whether he does or not.
No.
Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, you named him in your lineup. I would have him on the bench in mine just because I have Nkunku there, and I think he's a better option. And at the moment, we haven't really seen too much of Nkunku on the left wing. We've seen little bits and pieces, but we haven't seen as much. And because I've been really impressed by him in pre-season, is that just the fact that he's now over his injuries, settled in a little bit better, or does it come down to positionally where he's being played? And that's the sort of thing that I'm still trying to work out. Maybe if you asked me this after the Inter Milan match, I'd have a different lineup for you. But for the time being, Kieran Dewsbury-Hall just on the periphery. I think the smart money is that he probably does make it into the starting 11. Yeah. So there you go. Tosin, obviously, if Trevor Chalobah goes, I think that already from what I've seen of Tosin, not just in pre-season, I'm on about Fulham as well. I think how I told you that Petrovic offers me a lot more certainty and security, and that's something I really like, right? I would probably say the same with Tosin over the likes of Disasi and over the likes of Badiashille. So he's made it onto my list. Mudryk, and then I've put Guiu on there, but I think that Jackson will be the man. I don't think that Guiu is that close to it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, fair enough. The only players that I've got in there that are different to yours, I've obviously got Tosin as the centre-back replacement option. I feel that Tosin is going to be the one that would replace Fofana in that system in the central centre-back. Then Lavia, obviously, same as you. You haven't mentioned Carney, which I'm surprised about. I think Carney will be right in it in terms of this
I've got a really bad trait, And it's bad because you know that I actually love Carney Chukwuemeka. Like, you actually know this. For some reason, off camera, I talk to you about Carney Chukwuemeka all the time, and I always big him up. And if anyone else mentions him, I say, no, he's class. On camera, for some reason, I've got this bad trait of forgetting Carney somewhat. I definitely would have him on that list for me, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And then for me, I've got one of the wingers. I mean, you know that my boy is always going to be Mudryk. I do think... And I'm going to try and take as much bias as I can out of this, which is very difficult because you know how biased I am towards this guy.
Yep.
I think 1v1, I think you underestimate his ability in that perspective. And I do think the one thing that the wingers really need and excel upon is the pace that you can get in behind. And I do think if we are having them high and wide and we can release a ball from an Enzo or from a Dewsbury-Hall, you know, what Dewsbury-Hall used to do so well was get in the inside 8 position and play a ball through the left back and the right back, the left back and the centre back, I should say, and pass it right through there. I think Mudryk would love that. Do you remember that goal he scored against Forest? Almost exactly the same ball that I'm discussing.
Yeah.
So I think that Mudryk is the one that I'd want to
having players in that sort of positioning where we're imagining that maybe a Caicedo, a Dewsbury-Hall, or in my case, Nkunku in there could facilitate those type of runs, and then inevitably or possibly those type of goals for Mudryk way more often this season. So there's definitely a method behind that.
Yeah, and look, I think that is sort of wishful thinking because I agree with you. I think that Sterling will be the main man on the left-hand side at the start of this season, even though I've said that Nkunku is the one that I'd put on the left-hand side. The only other one I've got, which is a bit cheeky because I said we wouldn't do this, but I've got the new striker as being one that could be involved in this team. Now, I've done you there because I've said the rules are not involving any new players. I don't think...
It's your channel, mate. Do what you want on here. Do what you want on this one.
I don't think that Mark Guiu is going to play as much as we expect based on his performances in pre-season. That's not saying I don't rate him. I think he's been excellent. I love the way he's held onto the ball. I think his dribbling has been brilliant. And as I said on your video, on your channel, I love the fact that he's got knocked down, could have won a penalty on a couple of occasions, gets up, gets a shot away. Maybe in some occasions he should have passed it, but still love it. And I think in the future, this guy could be immense for us. I think
mentality
he has got...
looks strong.
And he just looks strong generally. Like it's not just even just his mentality. He looks like he's a big guy. He looks like he can become a Premier League sort of... You know what it's like in the Premier League, coming from La Liga, you need them to be big and pacey and strong.
And in the same way I said I had a little bit of banter off the Villarreal fans about Jorgensen, I had a lot of Barcelona fans saying to me they were really upset that he went.
Really?
Yeah.
And that just shows you, I mean... We give the transfer guys a load of banter about being shit, but to bring that guy in for €5 million, that's one of the best deals we've done in a long time. You have to say, even if he never makes it at Chelsea, we'll be able to make our money back, if not fourfold. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, look, I'm really excited to see what these guys think that are watching. Like, this team has been really difficult to build, and I think it does show the sort of depth that we've got in Chelsea right now. Maybe it's a lot of depth and not a lot of individual quality, but we'll say that it's a bit of both, won't we? But yeah, mate, thank you so much for coming on my channel.
Mate, thanks for having me. It's pleasure to come back on. I think it's my second appearance now.
There you go. Well, I always, do a favour with smaller channels, and I always bring them on the show.
There you go. It's like a make-a-wish.
Right, before we go, please subscribe. We've said it already, but subscribe to Joey Knight. Joey Knight, so close to 100,000. I'm going to get that play button, and I'm going to have it behind us right here. He probably will want it at home, but we're going to put it up in the studio because I just want to be proud of it every time I see it.
I will be. Thank you very much, mate. I really appreciate it.
All good. And yeah, if you aren't subscribed to this channel, please do. We've got loads more videos talking all about Chelsea, even through pre-season, and I will see you in the next one.